Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. I've got my sleepy girl Luna here with me today. It's been a while since I have had her here on a video. She's just always asleep, and it's usually in the blinds of my windowsill of the plant room, and I usually don't want to disturb her, but she was hanging out actually on the daybed, so I figured I would have her say hello. She is the sweetest girl in the whole world. I don't know why I don't try to grab her more often, but she's here. She's so cute. And of course, very sleepy. I always film during everybody's nap time, but it is what it is. Today, I want to actually talk about Hoya blooms because I have so many Hoyas that are either currently blooming, just finished blooming, they're about to bloom. So I want to talk about the ways that I've been able to get Hoyas to bloom in my collection. When I first started collecting Hoyas, I was actually convinced that I was never going to be able to get a Hoya to bloom. Now, this was over 4 years ago. I was so scared to get Hoyas for the longest time, and now they make up most of my collection. So it is a lot easier than you think, but there are some things that you can do to really increase your chance or to get Hoyas to bloom or to just look out for when you are trying to grow Hoya and get them to bloom. The first thing that you should keep in mind when you are trying to get Hoya to bloom is seasonality. So even though we are growing our plants in a temperature and often humidity controlled environment, they still understand that there are seasons going on. I noticed this very much in my plant room because I have an east-facing floor-to-ceiling window in here. I can see when these plants are getting direct sunlight during the day, how long, and obviously during the summer they get it so much longer than in the winter. Now we're in fall, and in Texas, fall is a lot like spring, so plants here often do very well in the fall and the spring, and so I tend to get a lot of blooms in the fall when typically you don't think, especially growing up as an outdoor exclusive gardener, I don't think about plants blooming in the fall. I think about plants dying in the fall and leaves turning. But with our Hoyas, it can lead to a lot of blooms in the fall. So that's why I have a few that are blooming to show you today, but I also have a Hoya that only exclusively blooms for me in the fall. So this plant, in the 3 years I've had it, has only ever bloomed in October and November, and there are other Hoya like this, but for me, this is the only one in my collection that will exclusively bloom at one time of the year. That is my Hoya numerarioides, and it actually has a bunch of active peduncles right now. If you are looking for a Hoya that is an easy bloomer, this is the one to get. It bloomed the first year I had it, and it just continues to bloom every fall ever since. So there is a peduncle right there getting ready. There's one here. There's a bunch right here. And this is a plant too that doesn't just bloom in one spot. Here's a peduncle right here. It blooms everywhere, and it'll bloom consistently for about 2 months. If I'm lucky, I will also get some blooms in December, but typically October, November is about the time that I would get blooms on this plant. Now we're having a very uncharacteristically warm fall here in Central Texas, so that might be why it is mid-October and I still don't have opened blooms on this plant, but I know it's coming. I mean, obviously there are peduncles everywhere in this plant. There's probably at least 10 so far, and more will come as the fall progresses, but it could shift a little bit just based off of the typical weather and whether or not it is a little warm or a little cool for that time of year. But this is a plant that will reliably bloom every single fall. So if you are looking for a plant that is going to bloom really easily for you, I would highly recommend this one just because it is so consistent and so predictable. But it just goes to show that plants are in tune with the seasons. I have another plant that blooms very reliably in the fall and spring for me. That is my Hoya fuiensis. You guys know this is one of, if not my favorite Hoya in my collection, and I have 2 active peduncles that are blooming at the moment. And then I have one, you can see all the little blooms on the way. It's actually caught inside of this, so I can't really separate them. So there's that one. And then I have one here as well. So I have really beautiful active blooms on this plant. It's got another peduncle down here, but that's not active at the moment. And when it is blooming, this one does not grow as much. But what got this plant to bloom for me was just becoming a more established Hoya Cuttings can bloom, but it is often due to the stress of being cut. I find that patience of waiting for a plant to become a more established full plant versus a rooted cutting or just a small plant, you're way more likely to get your Hoya to bloom if they're a larger plant. So it does require a little bit of patience, but this one, I usually know when it stops growing, I'm gonna get blooms soon. It doesn't like to grow leaves and bloom at the same time for some reason for me, but it is a pretty reliable bloomer. It usually has, oh, here's another peduncle that's not even active. So it's usually got at least 2 active peduncles at a time at this point because it is a very well-established plant. I've had this for about 2 years, 2.5 years now. So I can expect blooms from this one. It is a pretty frequent bloomer. I obviously have a bunch of Hoya that have never bloomed for me, but once you get a Hoya to start blooming, you can expect that it's going to keep doing this over and over again. This Hoya actually inspired me to make this video today because I walked into the plant room and it must have just opened overnight. The entire plant room is filled with the smell of this Hoya. This is a Hoya lacanosa Nanjuk Ladang, and lacanosa are another one I would highly, highly recommend if you really just want a Hoya that's gonna bloom for you. Constant blooms on most of my lacanosa types. I have one I'm gonna show you that I can't get down. It's my snow caps. It's just in a hanging basket. It's tangled up in there. I can't move it. So that one is about to bloom. This one is blooming for the first time. My CVL, which is kind of like a lacanosa, that just finished blooming. My reverted Asami blooms all the time. My Moonlight has bloomed for me. My Royal Flush has bloomed constantly. There's so many lacanosas for me that just bloom all the time. And it smells, this is probably one of my favorite smelling Hoya blooms. The Numerarioides smells a little bit like a spiced sweet smell, kind of like cinnamon sugar almost. This is just straight sweetness. To me, it reminds me of honeysuckle. It's just so sweet, so fragrant, so strong. So this is a really lovely Hoya that blooms all the time. So if you are looking for Hoya that are just gonna be really easy to bloom, I would highly recommend this one. Again, this is a more established plant, and another trick to get your Hoya to bloom is to kind of let them go root bound and outgrow their pot. So obviously this is not recommended to leave in this situation for too long, but if you're just really desperate to get your Hoya to bloom, I would leave them in the pot a little bit longer than you should. They just really like to be snug in their pots. They don't like to have way too much room. If I had this in a 6-inch pot right now, probably wouldn't have put out this peduncle. They just don't like to have a lot of extra room in their pot. So this is, if it hadn't been outgrowing the pot like this kind of situation is ideal for them. And because it is root bound, I have basically forced it to bloom. It's a little bit more stressed out, but I get these pretty blooms out of it. And probably once they're done, I will repot this one. I've been meaning to do it for a while, but it is kind of a trick if you can stay on top of the watering to get them to bloom. Also, when they're putting out peduncles, really make sure to stay on top of watering, stay on top of fertilizing. That way the blooms don't blast. That is a really common thing I experienced at first when I was trying to get Hoyas to bloom. I'd noticed they'd put out peduncles, and then before they would open their blooms, it'd all fall off. And it was really unfortunate, really sad, and I learned I was just underwatering the plants. I wasn't keeping them fertilized enough. They need the extra nutrients and they need the extra water to bloom, especially if they're a bit root bound like this one. It's just so pretty. I love how this one has a bit of a purple tint to it as well, but a lot of them will end up being a little bit more yellow or white, but they're all lacanosas. They should look like this and pretty much smell the same. Here is another one of my lacanosa about to bloom. This is my Hoya lacanosa snow caps. So here's a really nice new peduncle on the plant. I think there's other ones. Yep, there's one right here. That's an older peduncle, but it is active. Here's another new peduncle as well. So with the seasonality, this one being so close to the window, it's realizing that the weather is a bit more ideal for blooming. That's why it is blooming currently. Also, I have a Hoya rigida right here that is activating a lot of peduncles for the first time. I did have this one bloom for me in May, but I missed it because I wasn't in town. So I have yet to see what these blooms look like. I'm very excited to hopefully at least get a couple of these to bloom for me. This is my Latifolia Snow Queen, and I'm showing you this because it has grown up here and it constantly blooms for me up here. Got blooms opening at the moment. I cannot get this plant down. It doesn't really grow much right now. It just blooms. I don't think they're very strong blooms. I don't usually smell much to them, but they're very cute. They're small, they're pretty. So it is nice to enjoy them. Eventually, if it grows again, I will cut it, but for now, I'm just enjoying the little blooms. I have also noticed for the first time, I've got a peduncle here on my AH027. I have not had this one bloom for me before. I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I will probably post a short about it if it blooms, but fingers crossed, because I always love when a new variety blooms for me. It's just really exciting. I don't look up what they look like, especially if they're uncommon ones, because I really like to be surprised with these. And here is the remnants. This is my CVL. It just finished blooming, lives right next to the Lacanosa here, but unfortunately I didn't catch that one in time. It just finished, but the blooms look pretty much the same as these, just a little smaller. So there are some things that you can do to get your Hoyas to bloom faster for you, but the key thing is just time. Being patient and waiting. It will happen. I was so convinced that it wouldn't happen at first. That was early in my plant journey. I didn't know anything about Hoyas really, and the more that I got them, the more that I grew them in my collection, I realized they're gonna bloom eventually. It's just a matter of time. It really is. Just be patient. Get some Hoyas that are easy bloomers like a Lacanosa. I have found a lot of Latifolia types to be really easy. My Fuaensis, once it established itself and started blooming, it blooms every year for me. And the new Mularioides, that will bloom every single fall. No matter how big that plant is, it will bloom. So there are some things you can do to kind of boost your confidence with blooming Hoyas, but also sometimes a plant will surprise you. I was so surprised. I think in my September favorites, I showed off my species Saba dragonfly that bloomed for the first time. I was not expecting that at all. That is a plant that I bought in April. Yes, I bought it as a more established plant, but I was not expecting that. It was such a pleasant surprise. It does actually have another peduncle that I'm hoping will bloom within the next month as well, but it's so delightful to see Hoyas bloom, and I really hope that you all get to experience that when you're growing your Hoyas, but really just waiting, and it'll happen. And you will know because you will walk into your plant room or your plant space and you will smell it. And not all of the Hoya blooms smell the best. I have been really lucky that every single Hoya I've gotten to bloom has smelled great, but I have heard some horror stories in a way of ones that don't smell so good, and they're so bad that people will actually cut off the peduncles because they don't want to deal with how bad those blooms smell. So I would say if bad smells really bother you, go for some sweeter smelling varieties like Lacanosa. The Fuaensis smells great too. And then there's some that really just don't have a strong smell at all, like my Latifolias. I can't smell anything. And the species Saba dragonfly, that one, I just couldn't smell much at all. It was a little sweet, little floral perfume, but I really had to get up close, get my nose in it in order to smell anything. So that's it for our little breakdown about blooming Hoya. I hope you found this video a little bit helpful and informative so that you can get Hoyas blooming in your collection as well if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give Luna and I here a thumbs up down below and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here on the channel. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next one.